Hey, Vicky.
Hey Fiona, how's it going?
It's going well, and I believe that in our last conversation, you had indicated that you were going to tell me about the gun-toting Democrat women of the rural Midwest.
Yes, I'm going to talk about the gun toting rural women of the Midwest Democrats and their points of view. I want to talk a little bit about their unique points of view on gun control because they are gun owners themselves.
Right. I want to hear about this.
Okay. Well, I wanted to bring up this topic to again, propose a kind of complex issue that's hotly debated, obviously, on both sides of the spectrum, which we talk about often in terms of other topics. This is another one that I think that there is a segment of the population that people may not be fully aware of. We there are a lot of assumptions about Democrats and their positions on gun control and guns in general. People assume that Democrats are totally, they want to take away everybody's guns, they want to roll back the Second Amendment and all this stuff. And the position of Democrats, as far as I understand it, is actually much more complex. So, for instance, I am myself from the Midwest originally, and come from family on both sides of my family, a lot of farmers, and in particular on one side of my family, a lot of women farmers who I have. I have relatives who ended up being single moms and farmers and ran fully functioning farms themselves while raising kids as single moms. And they are gun owners. They really have to be in that situation, not only to protect their livestock and everything, but also to protect their families. Some of them live in really remote areas and are very much pro Second Amendment and very much in favor of gun ownership being legal in this country. However, they also vote Democrat and also have voted for stricter gun control laws. And I think a lot of people don't realize that we have these segments of the population that are gun owners, that are pro-gun, as a Second Amendment right, but also want stricter gun control. In other words, their position is that we have a right to own a gun, but there has to be stricter regulation around it. And the rise in school shootings and all of these mass murders that we have unfortunately dealt with in this country, I think, is driving that position even more so. I feel like there was from, if I were to reach inside their minds from their point of view, there was a time in this country where responsible gun ownership was the norm. And it feels like that norm is going by the wayside. Now we have irresponsible gun ownership. People, sometimes even teenagers, obviously, buying assault weapons online and not having, not having very strict regulation around that. And then, of course, the consequences have been pretty awful in some cases. So I kind of wanted to find out what you think of this, Fiona, as a Republican, and if you're aware of this, this, I guess, portion of the voting bloc on the Democrat side.
Yes, well, first of all, I'd like to know why these women want guns. What do they want them for?
Well, for protection, obviously for self-defense, especially, especially in the case of the people that I happen to know, if they are single moms and running a farm and living alone in some remote backcountry, they do want one to protect themselves. But they also are more than willing to go through any background checks or pre-screening in order to have that right, or in order to obtain, the right to own that gun.
Okay,
Yes.
so they're living out in the sticks, and
Right, exactly.
Would they consider that in suburban or urban areas would have the same need to own a gun as they do?
Well, I think it depends on your personal situation, and I think that they would think you have a right to own a gun as long as you can prove that you are not, a crazy person and are not going to use that gun irresponsibly.
The trouble is, I can see so many problems with that. I can see, for instance, keeping guns out of the hands of people who have engaged in domestic abuse or various crimes, but unfortunately, we don't all get annual mental health evaluations that indicate that we're schizophrenic or liable to go crazy or anything like that. And so there's no way to know. There's no way to stop the crazies until they execute, until they go crazy.
How would you explain, for instance, the rise in school shootings, which is really a fairly recent thing? Where is that coming from? If not coming from, I don't know, easier access, I guess, to guns by people who are clearly not, capable of using them responsibly.
I have the impression a certain amount of that is copycatism. It's now the thing. That's what you do now.
Right.
If you, it's just a thing. It's an established cultural, societal thing. Go shoot up a school. Go shoot up a bunch of people or a concert or whatever. That's what you do now when you have, I don't know what it is, like raging misogyny or misanthropy or whatever the heck it is, or some sort of resentment.
Right. Do you think Republicans see that as a problem and see that as something that can be dealt with through lawmaking?
Oh, keeping guns out of the hands of crazies.
Yeah, or like doing something to slow down the school shootings, the mass shootings, which has become like you said, the copycat norm these days.
Oh, well, they do have an answer for that, and that is arm everyone.
Okay.
Arm everyone. The teacher should be armed. The principal should be armed. Everyone should be armed. Who's going to come into a school and start shooting like crazy if half the teachers can just whip the gun off their hip and nail you?
Is that really what they are proposing, that schools be armed?
They would like to go back to a time when gun ownership was, as you say, so widespread and so responsible and so casual. In fact, I was reading on one of my conservative forums about a time when, it was grew up in somewhere in the Midwest, the Ozarks, wherever the heck it was, and the teenage boys, would just have their rifles in the back of their trucks because they would go hunting after school, so they would just have their loaded guns right in their trucks. I don't know how you can get back to a state like that, though, to a status like that, I mean to say, where we all know better.
And I just wondered what you think about assault weapons in specifically.
Shall not be infringed.
Okay.
It's the principle of the thing.
Okay, so they feel like it's infringing on a constitutional right.
They feel that it's infringing on a constitutional right, yes, and also I think they imagine using those things on a hostile armed force.
What wasn't the motive behind the Second Amendment was to make sure that we couldn't be overtaken by a specific government or
our own government. We could not be subjugated by our own government. Yes.
Right.
That's where your AK-47s just might come in handy. I can think of two cases also that awakened me to the necessity of, communities just being armed. Mm-hmm. One was, everything I know I learned from movies. I was watching The Piano, that movie with Aidan Quinn, and it depicts the encroachment of Germans in Jewish communities in Europe. And I remember watching that movie and just watching these horrible things happening, and 4 words coming into my brain: those Jews need guns.
Oh my goodness.
If every Jew was well armed and was a really good shot,
yep,
they could have at least made enough noise. I just thought those Jews need guns. And another incident that I was reading about in history, and there are so many incidents like this. These are just the ones that I encountered. It was, I can't remember, I think it was on Mao's Long March. He's going through China, and there was one village, I'm pretty sure it was on the Long March. There's one village they're going through, and they're out of supplies, whatever, and they confiscated the entire harvest from this village.
Oh my God.
It was just after the harvest, and they confiscated the entire thing.
Oh my God.
Which means that those people had, 75% of them probably starved to death over the next year. Probably that village absolutely died, because if 75% of the people starved, or 50% of the people starved, and there weren't enough of them left over to plant the next harvest, whatever.
Right.
But I was reading that and just thinking, man, if all those villagers had guns and just shot the shit out of Mao and his marauders. And that's why I think of people as needing protection from their governments and protection from whatever, just protection from unexpected invasions or uprisings or whatever. Okay, so right now we have kids jailed in their schools during the day because there are so many stories out there. There are so many incidents. It's such a thing that occupies your mind of a shooter coming in and going crazy. It seems to me this whole crowd shooting phenomenon is a sort of, it's an infection in our mind that will now never go away. It's, for instance, when you get infected with some viruses, you're going to have that virus for the rest of your life.
Right, and now it's not just schools; it's nightclubs or whatever.
Yeah, and we will never eradicate this awareness of the possibility that someone can just come in here and shoot the place up. We can't go back to that casual, that casual gun ownership, casual acceptance of guns in our midst existence, because we've got this mind virus now. We've got this consciousness, and now we have to change all our behavior around guns, all of our notions that this can be easy. This doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be a situation full of elaborate protections on both sides.
Was that it? Columbine, and it just seems like since then this problem has not gone away. And
like I say, since then, I think we're going to have to live with that. It's just going to be part of it's going to be a fear or a paranoia that we just have to live with for the rest of our lives.